Okay. The next topic is all about green revolution. Very, very important topic because you'll have to know who are the ones who played a very major role in green revolution of this particular concept. Now, there are two people who comes into this picture. One is MS Swaminathan and Chidambara Subramaniam. So basically what happened, as we all know, agricultural sector was really going really bad, and then all of a sudden in 1960s there was a famine which attacked India. Okay, so the belts of Calcutta, Punjab, the entire belt from Punjab to Calcutta, that entire place, there was a huge famine that people did not have sufficient food to feed the people. So basically, what happened? A lot of people went under this disease called as malnutrition, and they did not have sufficient nutrients. There was no food at all. It's not about the nutrients. There was no food at all. So, and then seeing this as a major drawback or the major challenge in the country, the Mr. M.S. Swaminathan, or the agricultural scientist Veda Chaim, decided. Okay, he was actually studying, he graduated from a Kerala university from an agricultural department, and then he decided, why don't we find a solution for this? And then he started doing a lot of research and came up with a small solution called as HYV, high yield variety seeds. Now this one, to do this research, he went to Mexico, saw an agronomist and found out, is it possible for us to use these seeds, these hybrid seeds, with proper irrigation and with proper water facility, irrigation and pesticides, is it possible to grow wheat? At that particular point of time, as I said, it was a major challenge. India was importing food or wheat from America, US. So initially it was importing somewhere around 3.6 million tons of wheat. But as days passed by, as gradually in 2000, sorry, 1970s to 80s, it increased it to 10.6 million. Okay, it started increasing its consumption of wheat, and that was being imported from US. All of a sudden, US comes out and say, we are not going to give you, the wheat. We are not going to supply you the wheat, whatever is required for India, and that's when that was a biggest challenge, and then that's when MS Swaminathan, along with a Mexican agronomist, came up with the solution called as high yield variety seeds. Now, this high yield variety seeds can be used with proper irrigation and proper fertilizers and pesticides. It can be grown. Now, they have to test this, and he actually talks to Mr. Chidambara Subramaniam, the former finance minister, and then they both come to a discussion or a conclusion that, okay, because there were a lot of opposition parties who were not ready to accept the fact, and they started blaming the government and everything. So basically, Chidambaram Subramaniam said, okay, we need an experiment. We need to experiment these seeds in order to know is it giving yield or not. Now, what to be done? Okay, we will do it this way. Chidambara Subramaniam, what did he do? He gave his part of land, or whatever position of land he had, gave it to Mr. M.S. Swaminathan to basically experiment these seeds. Are they giving a proper produce or not? And that's how a lot of people came forward, and a belt from the wheat belt of India, Punjab, Uttar Pradesh, all these were literally turned out to be an experimental land to grow these wheat or the high yield variety seeds. Now, with proper irrigation, and with proper pesticides. How should I switch on? Power went off. I think everything went. Everything went off? Yeah, like I think only the camera was on and then it blinked. The entire power went off for it. You just let me know how to do it so that I'll not call you next time. No, no, please call me. Yeah. So weird. I think internet should have gone off. Okay, reset this, restart this nonsense. The best thing is switch it off and switch it on. Long press, something like that. Long press is the answer. Had your lunch? What's special today? Oh, oh, okay. How's your wife? Isn't she bored staying at home? Bored? She will do her thing. Keep in touch with the relatives, all that. Keep herself entertained. Talk to her needs. Then that's fine. 24th slide. Yes. Are you gonna continue from somewhere or are you gonna start from the beginning? Not from the beginning again. No. Yeah. What's your mic? So that's how Ms. Swaminathan, along with MS Swaminathan, along with the Mexican agronomist, came up with the seeds, and then they started experimenting in the portions of the so-called wheat belt of India. Later, the experiment came out to be a positive sign for the Indians or the government. So it was like they started producing more and more wheat, and basically at first what happened, the agriculture, whatever produce, they started getting the yield whatever they got from the high yield variety seeds. The farmers started consuming first. They made sure that they're self-sufficient, and then the excess was given to the market for other people. Because even the farmers were under famine, basically, no food. So they made sure that whatever produce they get out of these seeds, They're going to keep it for themselves first and then give the excess to the public or the market. And that's how it went on. Finally, India stopped taking produce or food, or stopped importing the food substances or consumption of wheat from other countries, and it became self-sufficient. And the most surprising part is they started storage of these produce for future famine or future shortage. And that was the biggest achievement, and that's how it was started by, with this term called as Green Revolution. At independence, about 75% of the country's population was dependent on agriculture. Yes, so that time the primary sector was agriculture than any other sectors, even though Britishers left. So obviously people are very much dependent, and that is why we keep telling this term, right? Agriculture is the backbone of our country. So more than 75% of people were dependent on agriculture. Productivity in the agriculture sector was very low because of the use of old technology. So as we already discussed about this, Britishers did not pay heed in getting new technologies to our country. So basically, because the old technology, agricultural was not in proper, it was not in proper terms, and then the agriculture sector was completely coming down because we are not using any extensive technology in order to develop the agricultural sector in our country, because it's like 75% of it is dependent on agriculture. And then the vast majority of farmers, I mean, there was absence of a lot of infrastructure, water, there were a lot of other facilities which were denied to given to the farmers, and basically agriculture became a biggest threat for them. And then India's agriculture widely depends on monsoon. So monsoon is something which is very, very important. Our in geography, if you could see, I'll have to see the movement of monsoon range or the wind which blows so that it gives rain. So basically, based on that, the farmers do predict, okay, this particular season or this particular month, we're going to make sure that this particular produce is going to come. At the same time, when the monsoons are not right in India, agriculture again is in a downward trend. So that is what became the major drawback. So basically, irrigation facility depends on monsoon, and the monsoon fell short for the farmers. No proper water, and they had no access to the irrigation also. They were having trouble in getting the access to the irrigation, because the ones who were having more money were given the facility, and the ones who were not able to afford it were denied from it. And then later, this particular seeds, that is your HYV seeds, high yield variety seeds. So this refers to large increase in the production of food grains resulting from the use of this HYV seeds, especially for wheat and rice. So they basically use the seeds for wheat and rice to be produced, because it is the most staple food of a country. And the stagnation in agriculture during the colonial wars was broken by the Green Revolution. So the shortage of food was completely abolished by Green Revolution, and thanks to Mr. M.S. Swaminathan and Chidambara Subramaniam for taking a huge old risk of experimenting this entire process. And then the use of these seeds with the use of proper fertilizers, pesticides, and correct quantities of regular supply of water. So all these applications in the correct proportion will make the seeds grow and give you better returns or better yield. And then the farmers could be benefit from these HYV seeds required reliable irrigation facilities as well as the financial resources. So basically they have, as we said earlier, they'll have to use a lot of pesticides and fertilizers in order to grow up this particular seed. Now for that also the farmers came forward, so that they need to have proper financial resources in order to ensure that the crops are grown in a better manner. As a result, so there were two phases which were done, and the first phase was the experimenting phase. As I said you, first phase of the Green Revolution approximately mid-60s. So this happened in between 65 to 66, 67. That is when this actually was done, experimented. And this use of seeds were restricted to the more affluent states such as Punjab, Andhra Pradesh and Tamil Nadu. They were not ready to accept, or they were not ready to go ahead with this particular seeds because of a lot of political issues as well. And the spread of Green Revolution technology enabled India to achieve self-sufficiency in food grains. So as I said, once they started getting more and more yields out of these seeds, they decided that, okay, we are automatically self-sufficient, the country is automatically self-sufficient, and they started storing all these grains or whatever produce, yields, returns, whatever they got out of these crops, they started storing it for the future perspectives. The portion of agricultural produce which is sold in the market by the farmers is called as marketed surplus. So as I said you, once whatever yield is being got by the farmers, what they do basically, they started having self sufficiency for them first, and then whatever was left out or whatever was in excess was given to the market, and that is called as marketed surplus. Okay, so a good portion of the rice and wheat produced during the green revolution period was sold by the farmers in the market. As a result, the price of food grains declined relatively to other items. So before that, what happened, everybody were not able to afford the food grains because it was very expensive and the prices were really very high. Now after this particular revolution, what happened, the prices started coming down relatively, and then everybody were able to afford the food grains and consuming food. The low income groups who spend a larger percentage of their income on food benefited from this decline of relative prices. So basically the lower class of people who were very much happy when this green revolution came in forward, because they felt that because most of whatever portion of money they used to earn, they used to spend on their food because it was very expensive. Now once after this green revolution popped up or emerged, they felt very happy because they were having their prices came really less and they were able to satisfy themselves in a better way. The green revolution, oh god. Okay, so basically, the portion of grains or produce, whatever is left out beyond the after the farmer consumption is called as marketed surplus. So once they are self sufficient, they give it to the market. Next one is a good portion of the rice and wheat produced during the Green Revolution period was sold by the farmers in the market. As a result, the price of declined to other items of consumption. So basically, when this became surplus, so when the demand becomes more and more, when the supply becomes more and more, so obviously the price of the particular goods comes down, and that's what happened here. Because of this high yield variety seeds, basically the prices of these rice and wheat basically came down, and the low income groups who spend a large percentage of their income on food, they felt more relaxed, more happier, because the price of the wheat and rice actually come down. And then the green revolution enabled the government to procure sufficient amount of food grains to build a stock which could be used at times of food shortage. So this even enabled the government also to make sure a portion of this stock is kept aside for shortage of food. So whenever there is a shortage, the government decided that they use these yields. So this is a remarkable event in our Indian history and the economics. Moving ahead, the debate over subsidies. So what happened basically, not everybody came forward in using these seeds. They were not very comfortable. They do not want to use something which is foreign to them. So that is how a lot of people opposed, saying that they will not be growing such seeds in their farm. So generally what happened, it is generally agreed that it was necessary to use subsidies to provide an incentive for adoption of new HYB technology. Now this is a new technology, right? Now as I said, most of the farmers were not ready to come and accept this particular variety of seeds, or they were not ready to accept the fact that there's some foreign particle coming into their farm and just growing it off. What if it destroys a farm? And there were a lot of confusions and a lot of problems were arising. And then the government came with the idea saying that what if people buy these HYV seeds, we give them subsidy, we give them incentive. Okay, so any new technology will be looked upon as being risky by the farmers. So obviously, as I told, if anything, some which is going to come as a foreign particle inside your place, you'll definitely see it as a danger. The same way, the farmers also looked at it as another point of risky element. So, and that is how, therefore, the subsidies were trying to encourage them, the farmers, to test the new technology. It's only asking, subsidies were given, incentive was given if you are able to procure these HYV seeds and grow. And this will basically help them in getting an incentive, and this will encourage them to buy more and more these variety of seeds, a benefit to the government and from the government. This was the fact. Further subsidies are meant for the benefit of the farmers, but a substantial amount of fertilizer subsidy also benefit the fertilizer industry. So as I said, there are two people who are getting benefited now. One is the government, and the other one is the other one is the farmer, because farmer is getting an incentive, right? Government is giving that incentive. At the same time, farmer is able to give them the produce of these high yield variety of seeds. Now for this HYV seeds, we need pesticides, right? Pesticides and fertilizers, right? So now if these farmers buy this HYV seeds, obviously they'll have to buy fertilizers and pesticides also, right? So for this, now this was termed as a benefit for the fertilizer industry too. For the fertilizer industry also, it was termed as a very big benefit, because farmers are getting benefited, government is getting benefited from whatever produce the farmers are giving them. And finally the fertilizer industry, because they have to supposed to use add such a sufficient amount of fertilizers and pesticides to the growth of the crop. Now, the subsidy largely benefits the farmers in more of the prosperous regions. So, say east, north. So, there are particular regions like when we say wheat belt of India, Punjab, Haryana, Uttar Pradesh, Madhya Pradesh, all these will be benefited. So, that is how they try to encourage these farmers in order to purchase these HYV seeds. Therefore, it is argued that there is no case for continuing with the fertilizer subsidies. It does not benefit the target group. It is a huge burden on the government's finance. So basically, they decided that this fertilizer, whatever fertilizer subsidies they're going to give, no, if they buy fertilizers, they get subsidies. But that became a bigger problem right now, because a few group of people from the government's end started questioning that now you give them fertilizer subsidies. Okay, great. But how is it even benefiting the government? It is benefiting the fertilizer industry. So do not give this fertilizer subsidy was the debate which went on, and then people came with a conclusion, because fertilizer is something which is very much required for this particular seeds, right? So there were a lot of chaotic situation prevailing in the government, even though there are a lot of benefits out of it. And then on the other hand, some believe the government should continue with the agricultural subsidies using farming, because farming in India continues to be a risky business. So some certain people started telling, see, it's instead of this fertilizer subsidies, why don't you give agricultural subsidies? You encourage people to grow crops. You encourage people to cultivate crops. So you encourage people to do agriculture, give government agricultural subsidies or incentives, rather giving these fertilizer subsidies, because already we know India is in the cutthroat situation of agricultural sector. Agricultural sector is completely dropped down. So in that case, they have to make sure that at least they get the agricultural subsidies in order to encourage them for growing these crops. Now, most farmers were very poor and they will not be able to afford the required inputs without subsidies. So that is one more thing, because most of the farmers are poor. Most of them are poor. It's not that some, it's most, because we haven't seen any farmer being the richest guy. Maybe he might have so many land, but we cannot hear the word called as he's rich, because most of the farmers are struggling to leave their earning, and taxes, no proper loan, no proper infrastructure, no proper irrigation facility. Their entire family is dependent on the crop what they're going to grow. And on top of that, even the climatic conditions, if there is no proper monsoon, obviously the farmer's life is at risk. Not only his life, his entire family life is at risk. In that case, what happened? So the subsidies is something very important, very beneficial for the farmer. So they decided, okay, if they have to buy these pesticides, fertilizers, they need subsidies. If they need subsidies, they are supposed to basically purchase these high yield variety seeds and the fertilizers. Thus, by late 1960s, Indian agriculture productivity had increased sufficiently enabled the country to be self-sufficient in food grains. As I said, so since they started doing this, no, India became self-sufficient in the food grain department, because they felt that they're self-sufficient not to import any food consumptions from other country. Okay, so on the negative side, some 65% of country's population continued to be employed in agriculture even in late 1990s. Even in the late 1990s, that time it was turned as a new era for them. Even in late 1990, 60% of the people were completely engaged in agricultural activities, because that was something which people do not want to leave, and that is something they are dependent on their living. They cannot just all of a sudden go to, I mean, they're not very comfortable. Most all of them are not comfortable going and working in a factory, rather developing their own crop. And that is what exactly happened. 60% of people were not ready to maybe choose or go for another line like how we do today. But that time they were solely dependent on agriculture completely. Next, public and private sectors in Indian industry development. Okay. Next one is public and private sector industrial development. Now, they were trying to figure out one by one sectors, and famine came, and it was very difficult for them to handle, but still they challenged the entire situation. India has been challenging every time, and when you test the power of India, I think India keeps coming out with different, uh, like a phoenix flower, a phoenix bird, every time with new activities, innovative methods, innovative ways to handle the situation. I think in India is such a inspirational country for most of the countries in the other world today. Now, public and private sectors in India is now the $1 million question right now. Is India going to be dealt with government or the public sector companies or private sector companies? Is the privatization going to be, I mean, players are going to play a major role, or is the public people who are going to do it, or the government is going to make a major role? So the big question is for the policy makers, so the ones who make the policies of a country every year, for them it was like role of government and the private sector in industrial development. Who should be given the importance, or who is doing what? Okay, so at the time of independence, Indian industrialists do not have the capital to undertake investment in industrial ventures. So during the independence, what happened? They did not have sufficient amount to open industries everywhere. Okay, so industrial new ventures basically, and it was uh, firstly there is no capital, did not have capital, one thing, right? And the other one is market being enough, nor the market was not enough to encourage industrialists to take major products, even if they had capital to do so. Even if they had more and more money, or even if they were having a huge amount of capital, the government did not let the private people to take over the projects. Okay, so these were two major challenge for them. One is they did not have proper capital, one side, to make the industrial ventures. At the same time, the government did not allow these private industrialists to take over, even though they had capital. Now, it's principally for these reasons. One is government had an extensive role in the promoting the industrial sector. So they felt that government only should be doing the role of promoting the industries in the country, not rather giving it to the private players. They were not very comfortable in giving it to the private players. Maybe they would have thought that this private people might take over them in the further stage. So that is why principally they did not want to give them to the private people. In addition, the decision to develop the Indian economy on socialist line led to the policy of government controlling the commanding heights of the economy as a second 5-year plan. So obviously at that particular point of time, opposition party now, as long as the country was in the hands of Britishers, everybody started, blaming the English for it, blaming the Britishers for it. But now, since it's given back to our country, obviously two parties will come into picture, two or two, three parties. They will start fighting. They will start fighting with a lot of quarrel, and then now they decided, okay, they are doing it for their benefit and not for the benefit of the Indian economy, and that is how the opposition started triggering these people every time. They started telling that no, the acting government at that particular era are just trying to benefit themselves and not the Indian economy as a whole. Okay, and then they felt the commanding power is completely with the government or the acting people. Now this meant the government would have completed control over the industries that were vital for the economy. So they felt that even the political social unrest, they've decided that these people are trying to fake it for the public, and they feel that the complete control of these industries were only in their hands rather than nobody else. And this was a major challenge for the present government to deal with it, because industries is something very, very important. Only when industries come, there will be employment opportunities. Employment opportunities increases, people will start getting employed, and the unemployment rate might come down. A lot of things in correlated, interrelated with this. Okay, so moving ahead. So basically, they all thought that the government should be leading the way, not giving it to the private people. So they did not want the private to lead the way at any cost. Rather, they want the public or the government itself to take the entire role of leadership there. Okay, so then a resolution was passed, that is Industry Policy Resolution in 1956. So this resolution contained three different categories. The first category is industries which are exclusively owned by the government. Okay, exclusively owned by the government. Only government is supposed to own. One is your electricity, your that's your BESCOM, that is complete monopolized by the government, right? Next, the second category consists of private sector could supplement the effects of the public sector, with the government taking the sole responsibility for starting new units. So second category, what they said, government will take care of the entire unit. Okay, sole responsibility, but you can supply raw materials or supply me necessary items required for my business. This is what the second category of things left to. So one is government taking the sole responsibility for starting new units, but private can only supplement or supply raw materials, necessary goods for the uh, uh, industries. Third category, which is remained to be public sector. This is private partnership, but still public private partnership also. The sole responsibility is with the government and not with the private people. Now, the policy was supposed for use for promoting industry in backward regions. So basically, in all these backward regions of Bihar, Assam, they try to get these, they try to insist, making these industries grow there, because that will create more and more employment opportunities, and the standard of living people also will get way better, and people will be happy with themselves. And it was easy to obtain a license to the industrial unit established economically backward area. Now even today, even if you want to establish a uh, industry in an economically backward area, it is very easy to get a license, because it's like you're showing them that we are trying to improve that area. For example, Bihar is an economically backward area, and a lot of industries try to land up or get their equipments there because it's one tax free zone. So getting a license to use this particular concept was very similar for the industries. Next, the policy was okay. In addition, such units were given certain concessions such as tax benefits, electricity at a lower tariff. So if you are trying to get this public partnership, they will get the benefits of electricity and low tariff from the government. So government will provide you incentives because of this. And the purpose was the policy was to promote regional equality. Your north, south, east, west has to be treated in an equal manner, rather saying that, oh, they are North Indians, oh, they are South Indians, they are from east, we don't even know west, we are not supposed to concentrate about them. So they wanted to get all these four regions in a most equality and equal and appropriate manner. Next one is small scale industry. Next one is small scale industry. Okay, this small scale industry, as you all know, it is something which is after agriculture. It's one of the best or major industry which has been supporting the country of our people, right? The people of our country. Now, small scale industry is defined with reference to the maximum investment. Okay, maximum investment allowed on the assets of a unit. So whatever assets you have, based on that they give you the maximum investment for them. Now this keeps changing over a period of time. So maximum investment will be from 1 to 5 lakh, or till date it is rated as 1 crore. So basically in 1950s a small scale industry was one which invested with a maximum rupees of 5 lakh. So that time it was 5 lakh was the highest, and they feel okay. But again, imagine 1950, almost 70 years ago, you cannot I mean, 5 lakh is an amount, is a huge investment. Today 5 lakh can be nothing, but back then 5 lakh is a very huge investment, correct? So if you feel that small scale industry, if you have 5 lakh, it is more well useful. Okay, rather it is, they feel that's the biggest investment. Now therefore maximum investment allowed is rupees 1 crore. Today you, for small scale industry, you can invest up to 1 crore. That is termed as your biggest investment of at all times. Now it is believed that small scale industries are more labor intensive, very very important, because small scale industries are completely dependent on people rather than the machines, correct? This is something which can be used a lot of people to come forward and make them do it. So a small scale industry will be a garments unit, your handicrafts, all these are small scale industry. But here very important is your labor intensive method. Labors are very very important, rather using big machineries. They try to use the labor intensive methods in order to gain profits out of it. Now this has to be completely protected, or to be like a shield from the large firms or large industries, because they cannot compete with the large scale industries. Okay, so it is believed that small scale industries are more labor intensive because they use more labor than the large scale industry, therefore generate more employment. So basically a lot of people are involved. Since it's a labor intensive technique, a lot of people are involved, and that will definitely create a lot of employment opportunities for the people. Now, but these industries cannot compete with the big industrial firms. So as I told you, they cannot compete with any big industrial firms. They are like one small ants in front of these big huge giants of the country. And it is obvious that development of small scale industry requires to be shielded from large firms. So if you have to develop these small scale industries in a better way, you will have to protect them from the large companies, because large companies are ready with their machinery. So if the minute a small scale industry is trying to develop, a large scale company will just definitely vanish. It will just destroy the essence of the small scale industry. And that's what most of the days, most of the handmade, or say most of the labor intensive techniques jobs have come down. Okay, so but these industries cannot compete. Yes, for this purpose the production number of products was reversed for the small scale industry. So the criteria of reservation, the ability of these units is to manufacture the goods. So basically they thought, okay, to help these people, they try to reverse the, instead of giving it to the industry, they tried giving it to these people, so that it will create more and more opportunities for them, and encourage them to develop their small scale industry in a expand them in a bigger way. Now, they were also given concessions such as lower excise duty, bank loans at lower interest rate. So, this not only that, they were trying to give them incentives to encourage them in order to uh, develop more and more small scale industries. And today we speak about Swadeshi, Videshi. We wanted to get all the Swadeshi goods to our country back. At the same time, we should not be dependent, or we should not be dependent on other persons or other particular persons. Goods and services, right? So we are self-sufficient. We are supposed to, and government gave them incentives and encourage them with lower interest and bank loans. Moving ahead, let's see trade policy and import substitution. We'll understand what is this trade policy and import substitution. Next one is trade policy import substitution. So what happens basically is industry policy were very closely related with the trade policy. Whatever policy they were trying to do, they make sure the trade policy takes over, checks over, and then you know give that policy or release that policy to the public and the stakeholders. Now here in the first 7 plans, they decided there's something called as import substitution. But people are not ready with this particular term called as import substitution. Let me tell you what is import substitution. Now, uh, US government or the UK government is telling that they will get you probably say leather shoes from US or UK, leather shoes from US for example, right? So what they have put a condition or what they are saying is we will exchange the foreign products, that is your leather shoes, with silk sarees from here. Okay, so there is two countries, India and USA. Okay, India has silk sarees, US has leather shoes. Okay, so there are two countries, India and USA, two shoes, silk saree and leather shoes. So according to import substitution means you give your Mysore silk sarees in return to your leather shoes, in return to the leather shoes from USA. And most of them were not very happy with this particular concept. Okay, this policy aimed at replacing or substituting imports with the domestic product, and that's why it's called as import substitution. There's something called as export substitution, wherein the exported goods are given back, right? So, for example, instead of importing vehicles made in foreign country, industries would be encouraged to produce them in India. So, to avoid this, what happened? To avoid this, what did they do? They tried to develop those particular concepts in our own country. They tried to develop those particular goods in our own country. Okay, so in this policy, the government protected the domestic industries from foreign competition. So the government looked very closely according to this concept, and they make sure that it is not going to sink the uh, that's not going to sink our domestic goods just to develop the foreign goods. Okay, next. so humid, warm, cold. I'm so drowsy. Okay, so protection from imports took two forms. So protecting these imports literally took over two forms. One is tariff, one is quota. What is tariff? Tariff are nothing but tax on imported goods. So whatever goods you're going to import, they're going to put something called as tariffs, tax. And because they make, that is why a lot of imported goods are very expensive. Petrol is expensive because of these tax levied by both central government and state government. And then a lot of chocolates, gold, all these which are being imported, any goods imported from other country to our country are do have something called as tariffs. Okay, and discourage their use. Quotas specify the quantity of goods which can be imported. Quotas, for example, they might say, best example is if anybody is coming from Saudi, Dubai, okay, Saudi Arabia, Dubai and all that, gold there is comparatively cheaper to India. Okay, so you have a difference of say somewhere around 20 to 30, 10 to 20,000 difference in whatever gold you purchase in India compared to Dubai. So Dubai is comparatively lesser. So what happened if you are a resident of India, right? You have visited Dubai for some say vacation or something, you visited Dubai and you're going to come back to India. You love to purchase ornaments, you purchase a lot of ornaments and you come back to India. In the Indian airport, they will definitely check you, and for that, unless not more than 5 pounds of gold you can get. Not more than 5 pounds of gold you can purchase, and from Dubai you can get. One person is eligible only for 5 pounds of gold. Okay. Now when you are entering India, they will stop you and they will say do not come inside. So they might say only 25% is allowed, whatever goods you are importing. So you can't get everything from there, only some 25% is eligible, and that 25% is nothing but your quota. Quota tells you how much amount of goods can you get or how much amount of the quantity of goods can be imported. So the effect of tariffs and quota is that they restrict imports and therefore protect the domestic firms from foreign competition. So the more and more tariffs you put on imports, obviously we will not start importing goods, and that is when you can protect your domestic firms, you can protect your own country's goods, your own Swadeshi goods, rather than encouraging this foreign competition in our country. So this is all was something which was a major challenge for Indians to move ahead with this, and the policy of protection was based on the notion that industries of developing countries were not in a position to compete against the goods produced by more and more developed countries. So they felt that whatever protection they have been doing, in the developing country will not be able to produce more goods as equal to a developed country. Okay, so it is quite difficult for them, so they decided the policy have to be in such a way. Now it was assumed that if the domestic industries were protected, then they would learn to competition in the course of time. So if you start encouraging your own country's goods, your own country's domestic products, definitely they will be energetic, encourage enough to start or give their 100% in developing these industries. But in India we do not do that. We try to only get something new inside this, but rather developing whatever we have. Okay, so moving ahead, what are the effects of policy on industrial development? Okay, we will see this concept.
How's it going?
Going good. Twice, thrice power went off.
If you want to take a break, you can ask her to come and record.
Who?
Anisha.
Oh.
Her own subjects, not yours. Yeah.
I was just feeling drowsy, so I thought, okay, let's wait. See
Next
and
time
then.
you take a break, let me know.
Ha. Okay. Next one is effect on policies on industrial development. So what happened? The portion of GDP contributed by the industrial sector increased in the period. Now we keep saying that India is developing, India is a developing country, it is a developed country. How are you going to measure these? Measuring a country is developed or not, we use something called as this is an indicator which tells a country is developing, developed or underdeveloped country. Okay, GDP is nothing but gross domestic product. So this is the monetary value of the final goods of a country. So we'll have to figure out which sector, and that is how we figure out, or the GDP is being calculated based on whatever finished goods are being circulated in the country or the final goods from the final users. So this is a form of monetary value. Based on that they create a percentage, and based on the percentage they compare it to the previous years to know is there any increase or decrease. Okay. So proportion of GDP contributed by the industrial sector increased from 13% to 24.6% in 1990. So from 1950 to 1990, almost 13 to 24, right? 10 percentage ka interest, percentage of interest is being increased. Okay, the trend is growing. So the rise in the industry share of GDP is an important indicator of development. So three things which actually determines the development of a country. One is your agriculture, second one industry, and the third one is service. Okay, industry plays a very major role, because if you could see from 13% to 24.6%, is a 10% increase, right? So this will in fact be the important indicator of development in the country, and the 6% annual growth rate of industrial sector period is commendable. So basically a lot of increase, right? A 6 complete increase from 13 to 24% because of the industries emerged during that era. It's something which is very it's a surprising miracle for everybody. Okay, now no longer was Indian industry restricted largely to cotton textiles and in fact the industrial sector became well diversified by 1990, largely due to the public sector. Till then what happened, we spoke about saying that in the British era goods Okay, the raw materials, whatever has been produced in India, used to taken back to Britain, made it to finished product and got back to India, and they make them purchase it. Now, if they take raw cotton, they get cotton clothes, and then they take jute, they get jute clothes, sacks, all these. And definitely what happened, till then it was restricted only to these cotton and jute industries. No other industry was actually left to be done, I mean given an opportunity for Indians to be done. So in that case, when public sector or when the government intervention, the government started taking over the industries, there was completely 6% increase of the GDP. The promotion of small scale industries gave opportunities to those people who did not have the capital to start large firms to get into business. So this given tried to, they started giving a lot of promotion, they started giving a lot of encouragement for those people to start the small scale industries in a better way. And instead of don't think about the capital for starting a larger or longer business, whatever investment you have, open a small scale industry is what they started encouraging. Then protection from foreign competition, very very important. So the foreign competition was also prevailing, and we spoke about import substitution. And then the development of indigenous industries in the areas of electronics, automobile sectors, which otherwise could not have been developed. So the private people were supposed to take over this, but still that did not let, the government did not let them take over these particular industries. That one is your electronics and the automobile sector in the country. And so foreign competition was at its peak, and they had to protect the small scale industries or the domestic products from these from these foreign industries, foreign competition. Next, in spite of contribution made by the public sector to the growth of the Indian economy, some economists critical with the performance of public sector in industry. So wherever you try to develop anything, there will be criticism. There will be one person saying that whatever you are doing is wrong. The same way, even though public or the government took over the industry, started leading them, not letting the private takeover do completely, there were a lot of criticism from the people's end, from the government's end itself, saying that whatever you are doing is wrong, give the chance to the private people also. Now, it was proposed at the beginning of this chapter that initially public sector was required in a big way. So, it was completely, as the new era or the new chapter was started, what happened? They wanted to give a equal portion to both public and private. Okay, but public played a major role. So, it is now widely held that state enterprises continue to produce certain goods and services, although this was no longer required. Now, when I say government, it is completely the whole government, but since we are a country with political unrest, right? So, what happens here? Every state government came up with a plan or investment or an industrial basis. Okay, so they most of the state enterprises wanted to emerge with new goods, but though it was monopolized, they want to take the monopoly status rather not letting people do it on their own. Okay, so example is provision of telecommunication. Telecommunication service was restricted to their state. This is state-wise service. Okay, this industry continued to be reserved for public sector even after it was realized that public sector firms could also be providing it. Even after the first thing, if you could remember, it was only BSNL which came into the first network in India, BSNL. So when this BSNL came, after that a lot of Reliance, there is lot of telecommunication sectors came, Reliance, Airtel, Hutch, Vodafone, Docomo, all these even after they came, but still the government did not want to let this particular company down. Even now if you could see, there are BSNL offices all over the world, all over the country. Now private sector firms, and then due to the absence of competition, even till late 1990s, one had to wait for long time to get a telephone connection. Even though there were a lot of people or a lot of industries popping up on this particular sector, they did not get the connection as soon as they wanted. Rather, they had to wait for a longer time to get one telecommunication telecommunication network. Even in the late 1990s, everybody were not in a position to afford it. Even if they were okay to afford it, it was very difficult for them to install it. So there were a lot of challenges which they were facing, and then the excessive regulation. Okay, so the need to obtain a license to start an industry was misused by industrial houses. So obviously they'll all have to take a license in order to start a industry. Now this license was being misused, okay, by industrial sectors, and a big industrialist would get a license not for starting a new firm but to prevent competitors from starting new firms. So basically what used to happen, you had something called as license. Now this license had to be taken to start. Now this license was completely trying to be misused. So one big player, one particular person, what he used to do, he used to take the license and he used to not let any other person to come over it. So in order to take a license, you will have to decide your competitors and everything. Even that particular point of view, they did not let anybody else take, because he is holding the license for that particular product or the good. He does not want any competitors to come forward in front of him, and that is why he used to take up the license and not let anybody else to take it, and that's been misused, which was claimed by the government. Now the excessive regulation of what came to be called as the license raj, permit license raj, prevented certain firms from becoming more efficient. So even if the firms wanted to become more efficient by themselves, because of this license thing, it did not happen, because license was not given to everybody later on because of few people who did a mistake. License was restricted to a sum of people, and because of that, that became a very biggest challenge for them to open or start anything, because of few people's misusing. More time was spent by industrialists in to obtain license or a lobby with concerned ministries rather than one thinking about how to improve their products. And literally they used to go for 3 to 4 months to obtain one license from the government because of those mistakes committed by some big players. So because of that, a lot of time was spent, instead of deciding on innovative products, eco-friendly products. What did they do? They used to spend time completely on these getting the license. Okay, so moving ahead. Wow. So finally what happened after this? The public sector firms on this view should be evaluated on the basis of extent to which they contribute to the welfare of the people and not the profits they earn. So basically they understood, okay, whatever public is, either the public is taking over the industries nor the private is taking over the industries. You have to evaluate these industries basis on what welfare they do to the public, rather not about the profits they earn. Everybody earns the profits, but mainly on public sector, people were some, I mean, a majority, not majority of people though, a few people were actually opposing, saying that they are supposed to make sure that whatever profits they earn, it is contributing to the welfare of the people, rather not just by keeping it themselves, because it's a government company, government is for the people, by the people and from the people. So definitely they have to the people, definitely they'll have to do it for the welfare of the people. So whatever, it's not about, it's always about the welfare of the people, contribute to the welfare of the people and not the profits they earn. The progress of Indian economy was very impressive indeed. So obviously the 7-year plans, 5-year plan, whatever they did, it was first 7 plans were completely impressive for the entire team of policymakers, and not only for that, even the public also. Our industries became far more diversified compared to the situation at independence. So industries in our country became very, very diversified, not like the Britishers restricting, but it is now completely with lot of unity, with lot of diversification. They tried to expand their industries, making sure that they gave the employment opportunities to the people whoever are comfortable with, and India became self-sufficient in food production thanks to Green Revolution. When you say Green Revolution, 2 people should come to your mind. One is MS Swaminathan and the other one is Chidambara Subramanian. Okay, so and then land reforms resulted in the abolition of hated zamindari systems. These zamindari systems are also been abolished completely. Then excessive government regulation prevented growth of the entrepreneurship. So government rules and regulations became more and more that they did not encourage the term called as entrepreneurship in the country. They wanted to be the sole authority in the country, and then in the name of self-reliance, Indian producers were protected against foreign competition, and this did not give them the incentive to improve the quality of goods that they produced. So obviously, they all thought that India should be self-reliant in whatever goods they produce, and that is why a lot of foreign competitions did not come in forward, and this also restricted from taking the incentives of incentives for better development of the goods and services in our country. See, basically in our country, they want to improve the quality of goods. For that they need incentives. But since a lot of foreign attraction was restricted, this became a drawback for them, and then Indian policies were mostly inward oriented that failed to develop a strong export sector. Inward oriented is nothing but they did not want to expose themselves to the outside world. Only when you expose yourself to the outside world, people will be interested, you will know what has to be done. But here, because the government felt that foreign competition might destroy the industries in the domestic country, they were completely inward oriented. They did not want to let anybody coming inside their country. And then the need of reform of economic policy was widely felt in the context of changing the global economic scenario, that is in new economic policy 1991 to make Indian economy more efficient. So after seeing all these based on the past experiences and the present experiences, 1991 there was a biggest change, and let's see what was that major change which made India more efficient and effective, not like any other time before. So let's see what was that. Okay. Next one is economic reforms since 1991. The minute you hear this word economic reform or this year 1991, the three things what should come to your mind is LPG. So the three things which should immediately flash to your mind. Okay, I'll show you. LPG. Three things: liberalization, privatization, and then globalization. The minute you either hear this word economic reforms, or even if you hear this year called as 1991, these are the only three things which comes to your mind, which should come to your mind immediately. LPG. Okay. Yes, ma'am.
Hi, how long is it going to take today?
Today, another 1.5 hour. I'll do.
Which subject?
Economics only, ma'am.
You want to complete?
No, there's lots in economics.
So which subject have you completed? No, none of the
None of the subjects have completed.
Which now you've taken up?
Biology
Okay.
and then economics, last two.
Okay.
This one is
to
gone.
complete these two, how many days will take?
Economics, I need another 2 to 3 days to complete completely.
Okay.
6
Full
hours,
day.
yes, full day. And then biology, I think some 4 hours is enough. Not even 4, less than that. Yes,
You
ma'am.
want some water?
No, ma'am, I have. Thank you so much. Okay, so when you hear this term, as I said, it should be only these three things: liberalization, privatization, globalization, and you will have to remember another major person, that is Dr. Manmohan Singh. Very, very important person. Because of him, this particular concept came to India through that time Narasimha Rao committee. Okay, so economic policy in India reforms 1991, The minute you hear this word, three things: liberalization, privatization, globalization, and then Dr. Manmohan Singh. You will have to just remember these many things. Moving ahead, let's see what is that. In 1991, what happened? India met with an economic crisis. Okay, so basically inflation rate went up to 13% from 6%. Okay, inflation rate went from 16% to 13.6%. It just shooted up. Fine. And then public debt went really high. External debt, borrowing from another country, borrowing from an external source, went really up. The government was not able to make the repayments on its borrowings from abroad. So whatever loan or whatever money it is taken from the outside government or outside sources, it was not able to repay back. Fine. So foreign exchange reserves were generally maintained to import petroleum and other important items, and then that dropped the levels that were not sufficient for even a fortnight. So basically that started dropping up because petroleum started getting really less. They did not have sufficient enough money, and every fortnight these foreign exchange reserves or foreign exchange value keeps changing. Foreign exchange is something which keeps changing every day, but these reserves ka value was changing like every fortnight. Fortnight is nothing but 2 weeks. Okay. Now the crisis was further compounded by rising prices of essential goods. So what completely the prices were literally decided by what are the goods which are being increasing day by day. So based on that the prices also used to increase. Fine. So what are the essential goods? So as very essential goods, so petrol is an essential good, prices started shooting up, and food, utility, all these started shooting up because of its importance. Now all these led to the government to introduce a new set of policy measures which changed the direction of our developmental strategy. So all these whatever has happened until date wanted a change from these. So that is when the government tried to introduce something new into the economy. So that is when after the financial crisis completely of India, there's some because from 1980s a lot of things were going on. Your public debt, foreign exchange reserves under loss, inflation rate going really high. So past a decade they have been seeing, okay, there's some lot of things happening in and around this concept. So why don't we introduce something new in order to make sure that everything is under stable, and we are able to show this as a developing economy. Now when expenditure is more than income, the government borrows finance the deficit from banks and also from people within the country and international institutions. So for this you will have to understand one thing. You don't have money, what you do? You borrow. So what is the term which is called as we don't have money, or money being very less? It is deficit, and another term called as surplus. Having more. This is having more, this is something we are having very less. Now when we are having very less, not able to meet our needs, what we do? We borrow from another person. Either we borrow from the public or the bank, right? Or what they do, they try to borrow from the places outside the country. Okay, outside the country. So this basically what happened, all these became a clumsy event because they were not able to repay back. Petroleum and all is something which we are importing, that tariff has been imposed, we have to pay those taxes, we will have to pay those customs from there. Everything altogether was a messed up situation for India. They felt that there should be something which will liberalize or which give us freedom from certain things, and this became a most difficult situation because altogether a financial crisis. Altogether we don't have money. We do not have proper resources to fund or give away these, and it became a chaotic situation for everybody. Okay. And then income from public sector undertakings also went really high to meet the expenditure. So whatever public sector undertakings we had or the public PCUs, these industries started borrowing from the expenditure for them became really more, and they started borrowing it from the public or they started borrowing it from the people outside the country. And then at times a foreign exchange borrowed from other countries and international finance was spent on meeting consumption needs. We do not have money, first of all, we do not have food to eat. Now what happened, whatever we borrow from the other country was for basically went on for our consumption needs. Where will they have money to fund the industries or the expenditure of the industries, because everything is going for the own consumption needs, correct? Now consumption needs. Neither was an attempt to made to reduce such profligate spending, nor sufficient attention was given to boost exports to pay for the growing imports. They were not ready to increase the imports, exports, and then pay the growing imports. Also, the income from public sector undertaking was also not very high to meet the growing expenditure. So whatever they started getting the income from the public sector undertakings was not sufficient for them to meet any of the expenditure what they had. So at times what happened, foreign exchange borrowed from other countries was spent on consumption needs. This is wrong, this is wrong, this is wrong. This went to green, it's okay, no? Green is okay, no? No, it's not.
Let's have a check. Has it been recording since then?
After you, not exactly.
Everybody only would have gotten over it. It's in blue, it's in green, no?
Yes. Yes, yes, hello.
That's fine. For some reason. No, 1 second, I'll tell you what it is. So, when it is, okay, wait. So, it reduces the echo. But it's fine, it's working. It's fine. Mama. Yes, ma'am. Hello, ma'am.